Welcome to the Classroom Brew podcast. This is the podcast where you have some teachers sitting down, having a couple drinks, and basically talking shit about education. If you haven't already, make sure rate and review whatever app you're listening in. I really appreciate that. That does help out the show. It bumps us up in those ratings. If you do send some sort of rating and review, I'm going to be sure to give you some sort of shout out on the podcast or on social media, whatever you choose. For this week, I'm pretty excited. This is the first time I'm doing a different type of mobile setup. Usually I use a site called Zencastr, but this time I've actually got it on my phone, hooked up to the Zoom. So for this week, I'd like you guys all to meet Mallory. Mallory, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. So this, I don't know about you, but for this episode, I'm actually not drinking liquor. Instead, I've actually got some coffee going, but I don't know what you're doing for this one.
I have water because I actually went out last night, so I'm kind of recovering a little bit.
Right. Well, that's good. Then you kind of have to after, I'm sure a week of... So right now you're substitute teaching, right? So I'm sure you really needed that night out.
Yeah, it was for a friend's birthday, and we kind of went on this, beer bar crawl where we live, but I don't actually drink beer, so I was just kind of there for moral support, and then we went to this restaurant she works at, or a bar that she works at, and then that's when I started drinking, so... Got
it. Okay. So wait, did you... was it a brewery, so you just couldn't, or you just were nah, I don't feel like it tonight? Because I know I can't actually drink.
No, I literally don't drink beer.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, so we have it's 28 breweries that are in our area, kind of ish. It's a trail that's really well known, and you go to the breweries and you drink a beer and you get stamped, and the whole goal is to go to all 28 of them.
Oh wow, that is quite the night.
Yeah.
See, now imagine if you had your own podcast where you could just start drinking and going from bar to bar if you actually were drinking beer, but that's awesome.
That would be actually up my friend's alleys for sure. That's exactly what they do.
Sure. Well, every so often, I'll get into a conversation with someone and ask them, if you had a podcast, what would you call it? What would the format be? We'll have to come up with that one at some point by the end of the episode. But
for sure.
So we were talking just before we hit record. So you're out in Florida, and you've got And what was the school you went to again? I'm sorry, for undergrad.
I go to UCF, so University of Central Florida, also known as You Can't Finish.
Okay, that one I haven't heard before. But so you were in a teaching program, and you're taking a year of leisure at this point. So what does that mean for you? What does that entail for you?
So at first I had called it a gap year, but I was well, that's more of when you graduate high school and then you take a year off and then you go to college. So I was well, I'm a little bit older, so I'll call it a year of leisure. And I kind of decided to take this because I was what we call an social science education track. And I was going to graduate in the spring and go right into teaching in the August, but I did not fulfill one of the requirements, which was taking our subject area test.
Sure.
And so I got to the point where I was you know what, I'm just going to take this year off and kind of relax. I have not had a break since I actually started high school, because even in high school, I was taking classes over the summer. I was super, super involved in school. Mm-hmm. So this past summer, I did not take a class, and I worked at a bakery. I made cupcakes.
Oh, wow.
And it was a lot of work, but
waking up early, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. I was working 40 hours a week. It was kind of intense.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was just say with coaching and teaching right now, I've got up to usually it's going to be about 62 and a half hours. That's the official for salaried amount. And mine was 130 something. It doesn't mean I get any extra pay, but that's what it was with all the extra shit. Really, the only break that I've had is because we're on strike right now. But once you decided, hey, some stuff's going weird with the content area test, and trust me, I get how annoying that is. We had to do our Ed TPA, we had to do our Type 14 content exams, and I had to take 5 or 6 of them, and then you had to take the videos for your Ed TPA, and the TAP or the ACT would work, or SAT, whatever you use. There's so many different loopholes, and then you still have to pay for your license at the end of it. But the decision to go into subbing, how has that kind of been paying off so far?
So I actually have been a sub before. I started off as a proctor because I didn't, and for here in Florida, at least for the contracting company I work for, you have to have your AA or at least 60 college credits to be a substitute. Okay. So I was in also the education program at my community college because I got a full ride there. So I did that, and then I transferred over to CF, and I became a proctor, and I did that, and then I rolled over into the next year, and I was able to become a sub. So I
Got it.
subbed for probably about like a year, and then I subbed again for the fall, but I was also in my first part of like my student teaching because we have two different ones. We call them internships. So I have
Yeah, I think we
internship
do that
one and
too.
two.
Right. And one of them is
Yeah.
just more
So
so, it's like involvement, really. Like maybe you teach 4 lessons or so, and the other one is like it's you for 14 weeks or something like that. Is that similar to
yeah,
what you had?
so that was our internship one. So we met Tuesdays. We would go into the schools on Tuesdays and Thursdays
Mm.
for it's like 14 weeks long. But I chose to also do Florida virtual school. So I taught on Florida virtual school too.
Oh, jeez.
So I did 7 weeks. Yeah, I did 7 weeks in a brick and mortar school at a middle school. And then I did another 7 weeks doing Florida virtual school. But mostly that was just like grading because they give all, like the lessons are already created.
Oh,
So we're
gotcha.
just kind of there to like grade and like kind of like do calls. Like you call the student, ask them questions. But I didn't do that because I was just an internship when my cooperating teacher, supervising teacher, she did all that stuff. So I basically just did grading, and yeah, that was not fun.
So that's the worst part, right? Especially if it piles up.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I think about if I had a grader, that'd be great.
Yeah, she had like because it's online instead of like having 28 kids per class or like 120 whatever
Mhm.
you have is by the end of the day. We had almost like 200 kids, I think. Like, and we had a student that was in the juvenile detention center.
Oh, that's
So
fun.
she said, yeah, she was like, don't worry about them. I'll take care of it because they only had access to the computer at certain times and only had access to the phone at certain times. So like me trying to grade their work or like do any of that stuff would be like too difficult to really trying to like communicate with them. So
Sure.
luckily she took care of that, and she was super helpful. And I
She's
really
like, I
liked
got the
her.
con, you get everybody else.
Pretty much.
That's awesome. Wow. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine sometimes I hear people talk about if they taught online in addition to like regular teaching, and I'm like, I've got more than enough right now, but 200 students, oh my God.
Yeah, it was because they start at random times. So
Sure.
we had students, I graded like the first like module, two modules type, and then she would grade like the rest. So I would get all the students who just begin, and she was like doing all the students that were like almost done.
Got
And
it.
you could those like I've done Florida virtual school as a student myself, so like I understand like how fast you can go with those modules and also how slow you can go with those modules.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, trying to sync that up with your own mind, I'm sure. Like, oh, let me grade something from like the first week and then something from like the last week, and you're doing it all at the same time. And that's crazy. But
yeah, it was and the content, it's like I know it but not enough, so I would have to like kind of go back into the module and like read where they like got this information from, or I
right,
would
right.
have to like look at the answer key, but the answer key, it's not really in the language that the students are writing, so I'm kind of like having to really compare and just like it was definitely a lot more work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like when you go like, well, in subbing, I'm sure like you've gone into a room where you probably don't know the content area. And so you're just like, let me real quick read what you guys are doing in your own book, and then you go from there.
Oh, yeah, especially yesterday I had robotics,
Oh,
and
jeez.
I've absolutely no knowledge of robotics. So
Right.
mostly they all knew what they were doing. We're here in the county I'm in, we're all 1-to-1, so they all have computers.
Gotcha.
So all the instructions are on the computer anyways, but most of the classes were building like their robots. So
Got it.
that was kind of like cool to like watch and see. But yeah, there's a lot of times
Right.
I've absolutely no clue at all what I'm doing.
Right. You're just like, I'm an observer here. You guys teach me. Do you ever get into a
Yeah,
situation
I'm a
though?
glorified babysitter.
Do you ever get in a situation though where they're asking you and they're like, "Hey, Mrs. Substitute, truly help me out right now," and you're like, what do I do here?"
Oh, all the time. Middle school math is actually where I excel in. I'm really good at algebra.
Mm-hmm.
So I normally can help mostly all middle school classes I can do. And then obviously the social studies in high school, I do really well with those.
Mm-hmm.
English, it's okay. I can do it. But yeah, no, like science, I can't. Anything higher than algebra, geometry, geometry, I passed that exam by like 2 points. Like I have no clue what I was doing.
Sure. I think I've repressed all my memory from taking calculus in high school, so I'm probably worthless in that regard.
It's traumatizing.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
is.
it's traumatizing.
I remember I had a sub one time when I was in like middle school for English. No clue if this person was actually qualified to do it, but at one point he just said like, "Hey, if it sounds right, it probably is right. If it sounds wrong, it probably is wrong." And honestly, I'll be honest with you, that's the mentality that I take when I do anything related to grammar. Is like, it sounds right, it should be right? And sometimes it works, right? But I'm sure that guy was never back again. But no, so you're actually doing content and things like that, and actually teaching when you're substituting. You're not just like sitting there for the most part, right?
No, I'm mostly sitting there.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm a glorified. That's why I'm a glorified babysitter. It honestly all depends too on the teacher and if they actually leave work for the kids to do.
Right.
There was this one teacher that I subbed for last year before I went into my full-time internship that she would leave actual lesson plans, and she was social studies. So I loved subbing for her because it was good experience and everything. But yeah, it all just depends. And I get a lot of requests from teachers to sub for them. So when they know me that I'm coming or anything like that, they'll actually like leave me a lesson plan. So I'm actually teaching AP computers in 2 weeks because I just happen to I know that teacher very well.
Okay.
So he's leaving me stuff to kind of go over with all of the kids, but it all just depends. And sometimes I'll pick a job up at like 10 o'clock at night for the next day.
Oh, geez.
So I'll walk in and I'll have absolutely no lesson plan. I'll have no rosters. I'll have nothing.
Right.
And I'm like scrounging around trying to talk to other teachers and see if they have any work for me. Because that happened to me recently, actually. And it was rough. That day was pretty rough for me, but I made it through.
I'll constantly get, at least you're like making the effort though. I'll get every so often in my email if I have a sub. For example, like I went out of town. I went to Cancun for like, it wound up being like 2 or 3 school days, and then it straddled the weekend basically. And so I was out of the country, and I got like I think my doorbell just went off. That's weird. And I got like this email from a couple of my AP students, and it was a video, and I was like, all right, whatever this is. And I opened it, and it was a video of my sub at my desk asleep. So I was like, great. I'm glad that they're now. Luckily, it's the AP course, so I just I put stuff in Google Classroom on a schedule, and then they just did their assignment as they went through. But yeah, for my other classes, because I only have one AP class, I was like, great. So my sophomores got nothing, even though it's the most simple thing in the world, where it's just students do it on their own, and this person's asleep getting paid.
Yeah, that sounds about right. My county actually, the contracting people they just laid off like over 400 subs because we were supposed to sub one day in September, and like almost like 300 people didn't do that. And then we have to also take like emergency training class. It's literally an 18-minute video, and at the end we get a certificate, and that's it. But we get paid for it, so I did it.
Okay, there you go.
And so now it's at the point where like there's just not enough subs. We didn't have enough subs before, and now we really don't have enough subs at all.
Sure.
And they hire anybody they can. They just want a warm body in the classroom. That's all it is.
Yeah. No, I think I get that vibe. A lot of our subs are like retired teachers too. And every so often I'll be in the building. Like for example, when I was trying to hire a social studies teacher at one point. And so I was doing that all day, but I was still in the building, but I had to have a sub. And I just popped my head in real quick and to see who the sub was and what they were saying. And they were getting the class started, and they're like, I don't even want to be here, but here's what your teacher gave, and this is what I want you guys to do, and if you don't fuck with me. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like, I'm right here. And then I just was like, all right, guys, good luck. And some of the kids were like, please help. Please don't leave. But some kids thrive with that, too.
That sounds about right. That's how some of the subs are here. I actually, this past week, I replaced a sub that was... I don't really know how to word this. I guess to say that he was not really asked back for that particular classroom.
Sure.
So he was there Monday and Tuesday, and then Tuesday night that job was open. I know that school. I go to that school all the time. I was like, yep, I'll pick it up, no problem. And I got there, and the sub coordinator, I'm very, very good with her, and this is kind of the sub coordinator you don't want to get on her bad list, or you will never be at that school again.
Sure.
So I'm very, very good with her. I pick up all the jobs at whatever she needs. And she said, she gave me like a heads up, and I was like, that's weird. Like, okay. She's like, be firm with them. And I was like, okay.
Oh, God.
So first period I had planning, second period fine, third period fine, fourth period a little chatty, but no problem. It was an elective class, so I had a lot of kids in there. Fifth period I was fine. Sixth period, I had 39 students.
Oh, Lord.
And it's like 2 classrooms. So I have to like close the door for one of them because they try and like go into the other class. It was like a mess.
Sure.
But I had the door closed already. I already knew like the deal. And it was okay. And then 7th period, that's when I had one issue. I had a student, like after I took attendance, he tried to like walk out. And it was an agriculture class where they were trying to go to the farm. And I was like, no. So I called a dean. They found him and escorted him back. I was like, why would you try to walk out? I know what you look like.
Oh, God.
So, but yeah. And then when he left, I was like, hey, if I ever have you again, just know it's a clean slate, but don't ever do that again. Like, I'm going to call a dean.
In your head, you're like, please don't have this kid again. Please don't have this kid again.
Pretty much, yeah. And it was just like so ridiculous. But when I turned in my stuff, and I was like, I had no problems. Like, I have no clue what happened with the sub on Monday and Tuesday, but those kids were also so relieved to see me and not the previous sub. And sure. I knew some of the students already, so I kind of, trusted them a little bit with what they were telling me about this sub. And I was just like, yeah, that guy should not be a sub. Like, we have a lot of subs, and I hate to say this, but it's true that a lot of them don't speak English. And that school that I was at is primarily white, and it's a struggle. It is a struggle there.
I never knew that you could have a language barrier with a sub. Like, I figured that's like a basic requirement, but I guess, like you said, if you just need a body.
Yeah, no, I was told that he was like Middle Eastern, and I think with the culture differences too, because at school, I'm telling you, it is very, very white to the point where you have to be very cautious of what you say there and what you wear there because of how, and it's a lower income area too. So a lot of the kids, they get bussed in from like miles and miles away because it's so spread out. In agriculture there, that class is very big. There's 2 agriculture teachers there. Luckily I was subbing for the husband and the wife was there. So it was made it easier for me, but I think his culture differences really impacted his subbing, and it gave him such a hard time with those kids.
Yeah, that's it's kind of sad when you have somebody that has like a diverse perspective or something else to offer instead of your just homogenous, community thing.
Yeah.
And then they just get basically abused. Like, I can't tell you the number of times that I've heard that from students who are like, yeah, we didn't identify with him, so we didn't really listen to him. And it's like, why should that be a factor? Like, this is the big issue we've got going on right now in 2019.
Yeah. It really is. And one of the classes that we're required to take at my school is like a ethics kind of class, but really all we talked about were how schools are segregated. And I never truly thought of it like that, not, between race, but like our social economic status. Oh yeah. And once I kind of took that class, and we had to like write 3 papers, and all of our papers were basically about that. I was back to subbing, I truly realized how bad my area is with that. And I went to a pretty wealthier school. I was like, I had some really, really, really rich kids. And then I was just like, oh, okay, like, yeah, sure, I can afford this. Like, I'm more comfortable. But I didn't realize until I really started to go to other schools that I noticed how segregated our schools are. So when I'm picking my schools that I'm subbing at, I'm kind of more cautious of how these kids are going to perceive me and how I dress and act and how I speak and everything, because that will ultimately make my job harder or easier. Right. So I always like have that in the back of my head of like, all right, how do I interact with these students? How am I going to get them to do their work? Right. How do I need to talk to them?
And you can almost take it from like a candid standpoint too. Like it like, is it something that you're just like, all right, let's address the elephant in the room and then go from there? Or is it something that you're kind of like, I'll just kind of take it tongue in cheek as we go?
Pretty much like tongue in cheek as I go. I am white and I'm Hispanic, so it's kind of easy for me to be very Hispanic and very white at the same time.
Sure.
So I play both sides, and it's helped me over. I've been subbing for like not full since I've had to take part time off for my internships, but for about like 2 years now I've been subbing. Mm-hmm. So I go to the same schools, and some of the kids I've had for 3 years in a row now. Mm. So it's, I do what I need to do to make it through the day.
Right.
With those
I get
kids.
that.
And and I only ever sub middle school and high school. So that also kind of makes it easier because I only have them for like 50 minutes and then I'm done. I'm like, all right, you can go now.
Right. When you think about those poor elementary teachers that have to do like a full day with the same group of kids, and you're just like, oh my God, totally a different struggle.
Well, and there's so many rules for subs. Like we're legally not allowed to touch any of the students, and we're not allowed to like even touch their book bag, really. So we're not really supposed to take away their phones, but I know in the past you've talked about phone issues and subs. I mean, I know teachers have it worse from when I was teaching in my internships, but subs, I feel like honestly, I'm just like, if you want to go on your phone, go ahead, just sit down and be quiet. Like, especially with the middle schoolers, it is awful. But I'm like, the phone is honestly like a pacifier to them. They will sit there and they will listen to music, or they'll like watch YouTube videos. But yeah, the phones are awful. But
it's like instead of an oral fixation, it's a technology fixation. That's what it is. Some sort of Freudian thing.
Yeah, and then our schools, they've blocked like all the social media and everything, but all the kids, they found ways around it.
Sure. They're more tech savvy than the adults are in the building.
Oh yeah, like I know students have shown teachers how to get around it and everything. And I remember when I was in high school too, because it was not that long ago. That's when they start blocking all the social media, and we found other like apps, like web browsers to get around the Wi-Fi and everything. And the kids, they're using like a thing called like VPN now.
Oh, yeah,
and I finally figured out how to work it. One of the students taught me one day because I was like, listen, like I need to listen to my podcast. Like, because even the podcasts are blocked by the Wi-Fis.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Apparently,
so I have to
even I'm not allowed in schools, my audio.
Oh, so yeah, yesterday I had to go on my VPN just to listen to some of the podcasts from you.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a school outlaw with the podcast. Interesting.
Yeah, they really block everything. But like I said, our whole district is 1-to-1, and YouTube is usually blocked. But these kids find other ways around it.
Right.
They find ways to watch Netflix still.
Wow. Oh,
and I was just like, what? I'm like, yeah. I had one kid during my internship. She was watching Bird Box. And I was just like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm teaching today. You guys like me.
Right. Stop watching Sandra Bullock talking about. So in terms of other like podcasts that you do listen to, you mentioned that, so you started from the beginning from mine. Are there any others that like, you're like, oh, this is definitely like a must listen that you've got?
So right now I'm only really listening to yours. I'm dedicated.
Hey, I like that. Right?
Yeah. I first started listening to podcasts like of, like mysteries and stuff, like murder mysteries and like just like random things. And then I stopped once I had gone back into once I started my full-time internship. I literally just had no time. I was so stressed. And then I actually found your podcast through Mr. D, his Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
He's like so I found him through him, and then I was like kind of working a little bit, so I couldn't listen to you right away, but I've probably been listening to you for like listening to right now. So I don't know what I'm going to do when I actually get caught up.
Wait, what was you cut out for a little bit? It might have been my phone.
Oh, so you're the only podcast I'm really listening to right now.
Well, cool. Yeah. That's pretty sweet. Yeah, I was saying Joe was on mine too, so you'll get to that one eventually.
Yeah.
I can't remember what number it was, but
I'm slowly getting there.
Cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I guess in terms of subbing and your experiences in there, you talked about murder mysteries. I'm sure at some point my podcast might turn into a murder mystery, but do you have any like sub experiences where you're like, holy shit, what did I just get myself into?
Yes. So there's a school. I live on the east side of like the city or like the town that I'm in. I don't really know what to call it, but I went to like the west side of our city and of Orlando, and that side, like I live on the east, so that's the west, and there's a school down there. It's down by the county jail. You got to drive literally past the county jail to get to the school, and I subbed for this teacher 3 times, and I only subbed for her because I had to do what's it called? Junior achievement. I don't know if you guys have that there.
We did that for financial literacy not too long ago.
Okay, yeah. So I had to teach that because of my major. That was kind of like one of the things that they were making us do, I guess, in a way, like a pre-internship type of deal. And I chose this school, even though it was on the west side of town, because it was the only school, or it was the only teacher that was offering Mondays. Every other teacher was like, oh, I'm only doing Fridays, and I have a second job, and that's Fridays. And so I was like, I'm not going to be able to go to the west side of town, but then also drive to my other job in time.
Sure.
So I had like mentioned that it was a sub, and she was like, oh, if you don't mind, like I'm actually going to be out soon. Will you sub for me? I was like, yeah, sure. No problem. However, I only taught junior achievement her 7th period, which was her only honors class. So I only ever saw how her like small honors class was.
Right.
I didn't know the full extent of how the other classes were. And that's where I messed up. That was my like, holy shit, I just really fucked up. Like, what am I doing? Like, I cannot relate to these kids at all. So it was really bad. And I subbed for her the first time. I was just like, oh shit, like this is gonna fucking suck. Like this is a horrible day. One is lunch. Right. One is for planning period. Like I need to, I'm done. I'm over this.
Right.
And so I did that. Okay. And then I still had to do more junior achievement, and she reached out to me a second time. I was like, okay, like it's a day that I'm not working for my other job. I can do it. And that was where my oh shit moment happened. I had this little 6th grade boy. I'm not a fan of 6th grade. I hate subbing 6th grade. They are the worst for me.
Okay. Sure.
And
fuck these kids.
And yeah. So yeah, this class, it was just like pure chaos, and I still like am traumatized by it. This little boy, he had a pencil, and he was going around and trying to stab other people in this class.
Oh God, there's so many 6th grade teachers that are like, yep, that's about right. Yep.
Yeah, and I had already like talked to the teacher, and I could see that she was kind of like super over the year. Like she even had mentioned that she wanted to go back to school and go back and get her master's. And move up to like high school or be like a counselor or something like that. I was like, yeah, that's probably good, because she could not relate to these kids at all.
Like anything else but teaching, please. Anything. I'll be a custodian. I'll be a teacher. I'll be a sub. She just really wanted out.
Of that. I think it's more of that school, because it was the whole school. It was another. Yeah. It was another like social, like economic disadvantaged school. A lot of the kids, they don't have the structure at home, which is like just another problem I think anybody sees with their classes, is that, you know, you have those kids who just, they don't have the structure at home. And then when they come to school, it's just, they don't follow the rules, and it makes it a lot difficult. It makes it more difficult for the teachers and for the other students too. But yeah, it's just that kind of school. And I was just like, you know, this is like good experience for me, because, you know, one day I may work in a school like this. You never know. But yeah, this little boy, he was going around and trying to like stab people. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I had already called the dean so many times, and sometimes the dean would come, sometimes they wouldn't come. And I was like, this kid needs to be removed from this class, because like I physically can't even touch the kid to stop him.
Oh
like,
yeah, I forgot about that part.
Yeah. So, and this dean, like, she would not come. And I was just kept calling her. I was calling all the other people that, like, I had a list of people. She was like, you need to call these people if something happens. I was like, okay. But I was just calling and like no one was coming. And I was like, luckily no blood was seen. Like I did not see any blood. So I was like, all right, like I can make it for the day. Like I'm like, there's only like 10 more minutes left of class. Like eventually he stopped trying to stat people.
Oh, that's good.
But,
he got
and
bored.
like the pencil was dull. So yeah, probably. The pencil was dull. So I mean, like, I don't think anything was going to happen, but it was just like the pure fact this little 6th grader was just going around literally trying to stab people in the side. Right. I was like, oh my God, please don't come near me.
And I was going to say too, with pencils, like, I have a mark when I got stabbed with a pencil, and I can still see it. And it happened to me in 6th grade, interestingly enough. And I still have the mark because like the lead, like once it pierces the skin, it's almost like a tattoo.
Yeah, no, I've actually have to accidentally stab myself with a pencil in the thigh, and I still have a mark too. So that's why I was like kind of freaking out that no dean, no administrator was coming.
Right.
And I was just like, after that, I was just like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I can't deal, like I can't. But then I made another oh shit moment, and I subbed for her a 3rd time.
Oh, jeez.
And
Didn't learn that
3rd
lesson.
time, no, I really did not. That 3rd time, there was, the teacher was out for 10 days. It was for her honeymoon. Mm-hmm. And, oh my gosh, I subbed for the Friday because we had a hurricane. And so that Friday was a makeup day, but she already had her honeymoon booked. Mm-hmm. And so there was a sub that subbed for her for like the 9 days, or no, I subbed the first day, and there was another sub that subbed for her 9 days after, the 9 days after. But I was there for my junior achievement, and that teacher, she actually the substitute, she actually started crying to me because of how bad the kids were. And in the back of my head, I was like, I know, and I wanted to cry with her because I was like, I know how difficult her classes are, and I was like, I cannot imagine 90s with these kids.
Oh God.
And she left like a 20-page note to the teacher, and like they knew each other, like they were somehow like related, I don't really know. And she like literally in her note, she even said that she wrote that she cried, and that she was like, and then she like cried to me that Friday, and I was just like, or that Monday, and I was like, I'm so sorry, but like I know.
Oh God.
But after that, the teacher, she had reached out to me like multiple times to keep subbing for her, and I actually had friends who were subbing at the time, and I convinced them. I was like, oh, her classes are easy, like go ahead and sub for her.
Go ahead, take that job.
And they subbed for her, and one of them was one of my guy friends who was at that time, I don't know what happened to him, but he was going to be for an English teacher. And he was subbing at a school that was very similar to this school. So I was like, oh, you can definitely handle it. No problem. And he said, no, I'm never going back to that school. And then my other friend, she only did half a day because we can sub also half days, in the morning or in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And she was like, never again, Mallory, will I ever do that for you? I'm never listening to you again. I was like, I love you though. Like, thank you.
Right. Thanks for taking that one for me.
Yeah. And then last year she reached out to me again, because this was when I first started subbing. And then when I started back up again after the summer, she reached out to me again, and I lied to her, and I said that it was a full-time nanny now, because that's also my second job. I'm a nanny, and I just lied to her. I was like, no, I'm so sorry, I'm a full-time nanny. So I was like, she's like, my kids are great this year, and I was like, I don't believe you. Like, there's no way.
You're like, I'm not above body checking another substitute to get out of your classroom. That's
no, definitely. Yeah, no, definitely not. And the other thing, it's on the other side of the town, and I don't get paid that much with the tolls and everything, and I have to take the worst road to get there. Like, it is not worth it. I got to the point where I was like, if it's the school's more than 30 minutes away, or if I have to take the highway, I'm not going. Mm-hmm. Because we don't get paid enough. And when you said that you had a sub sleeping, or the video of the sub sleeping, I was like, we don't get paid enough, honestly, to deal with this. Like, some of this other stuff that I've had to deal with, I'm like, nope, I'm going to sit here, and as long as there's no fights, no one dies, like, I'm done.
Right. Absolutely. So. And I think I was probably, like, sometimes I'm a little too harsh on subs, but that is true when you find out, like, how little they're paid. And sometimes, at least in our district, if it's a retired teacher that's subbing, if they go over a certain amount of days in a year, they start pulling from your pension. So you're paid very little, you're in there anyway, and then they start taking away some money, which affects you. That could really mess you up for a long time. But that's a whole nother.
Oh Oh, hell no.
Yeah, exactly
Yeah,
right.
no. Yeah, the way they pay us here is like, I'll be honest, I make $67 a day,
Oh,
and that's
geez.
before taxes.
Oh,
Yeah.
holy shit.
So,
That's
and
even,
that's just,
wow. That's way too
yeah.
little.
So, yeah. So if anybody's listening and you teach in Florida, be nice to your subs, all right? Um,
That's even
so
less
yeah,
than
that's
minimum
if you have
wage
your,
when you think about it.
oh yeah, I did the math and I was like, okay, well, you know what? In all my other jobs, well, the 2 other jobs I've worked, like I've always made more than that. So this, like, my paycheck is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But you get your AA and that's how much you make. And then when you have your bachelor's, you get a raise. So after December, I'll get a raise, and that's what I'm really looking forward to.
You'll go from 67 a day to 68 per day once you get that bachelor's, I'm sure.
No, I think I'll make like $74 or something. So it's not a whole much, but
Sure.
it's something. That's why I have another job. But
not surprising though. I mean, we're in the middle of our own strike right now because of our contract.
Yeah.
And pay is not the only thing right now, but we've got so many other things. And let's just say we had like a list of like 100 things. The mayor's office and her team was like, well, we've addressed 2 of them. And we're like, what are you talking? That's not even close. And she's like, no, why are you guys angry? And that's where it goes from there.
Yeah.
But not surprising.
That was kind of happening in our district too. Right in the beginning of the year, our teachers didn't have like health care. They didn't have any health insurance. So, and that's why I was just like, wow, if I graduate in December, am I going to even have health insurance if I go into teaching? Like, I'm not, but I'm still going to be traveling a little bit. So I was like, no, I'm not going to worry about it. Plus, I'm on my mom's health insurance still, so I don't really care.
Right.
But yeah, so it's just the way that they pay us here, it sucks. And then, like, if you work half a day, you only make, half of the pay. But if you, like, how is it? Our hours here are like, you work like 7.5 hours or something like that. That's like our contract hours that we're supposed to work as subs or whatever. But if you work more than 4 hours, then you can get paid the whole day. But if you work like 3.75 hours, then you only get half a pay. And most half-day jobs, they'll say half day. You're like, oh, I get paid, the same or whatever. No, you get literally half the pay. Even though, like, online it says half pay. It's a scam. Yeah. And then if you sub for, like, more than 10 days, that's called a long-term assignment. And then you can make, like, $120 a day or something like that.
Okay.
But schools don't want to pay you that. So what they'll do is they'll have you in for 10 days in a classroom. And then online, they'll switch you to, like, be in a, like, quote unquote, like another classroom, but you're still in the same classroom. So in this system, it shows that you were only in that class for 10 days and not going on to, like, your 11th day.
Oh, great.
And that's how they avoid paying you even more.
Right. It is a scam.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me, though. I feel like teaching in general, it's like teaching is a scam. That's what it is, especially if you're a sub teacher. So.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Well, I guess to kind of wrap up, I mean, we'll have to keep in touch, obviously, once you got all that stuff and the ball's rolling and maybe you're in a regular teaching situation where it's your classroom.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time, though. I know it's early on a Saturday, but this was fun, though. We'll definitely have to do an update at some point, especially when you got even more sub stories and all that. And hopefully, if you said you're on like episode 60, starting from the beginning, and hopefully it keeps getting better and better. Don't want to disappoint there. Is there anything that you wanted to plug?
No, just be nice to your subs. Leave us lesson plans, please. Those are super helpful.
Right. Give us something, please.
Yeah, let us know who the good kids are. That's also extremely helpful. Right.
Minimize the scam for us.
Yeah. But that's it.
Well, good. All right. Well, thanks again for being on. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening. If you've been with us from the beginning, I appreciate that support. If you're just starting and you want to go back, I'm sure you can hit up Mallory to check out some of her favorite episodes if she's been listening to the podcast as well. Make sure you hit that rating and review button in Apple Podcasts or whatever you're listening in, especially Apple Podcasts, though. That's kind of like the king podcast app. I really appreciate that, and happy to give you guys a shout out if you do so. If you want to reach out to be on the show or just talk and chat with us, you can reach us at Classroom Brew on social media or classroombrew@gmail.com. But until then, I appreciate your support. But Mallory, do you want to do the sign off for this episode?
Oh my gosh, yes, please.
All right.
Class dismissed.